let's take a look at what we're making, shall we? Hey, what's up? This is Victor Savell. Today we're checking out a project that was done over a year ago now. This is John Wick Chapter 3. This was featured in the trailer as this action sequence was going on. I really like this reveal because it features a little bit of everything that would be good in a tutorial. So we're going to touch base on modeling, subsurf modeling, the animation of the letters, some shading tricks on making these letters see-through at times, and how the camera moves, including the camera shake. And then the background is a completely different construct that was done in After Effects that we're going to also go through. So without further ado, let's go. Alright, and here we go. Let's jump right into it. So first couple things I wanted to mention: in any project, it's very important to know what scale you're in. So I've already chosen Imperial, and my setup template project file is already kind of has that included. So that's important to consider, because we're going to start by getting in our reference image. So first of all, we're going to hit Shift A, and you can see all of our keyboard combos right next to my face down here. So we'll go Shift A and then Image, and right here in the properties we're going to go ahead and get our image. This might take me just a second. I'm going to supply this image for you, of course, and here we go. Okay, so we imported our image and we're gonna turn it on the X, so that's RX90, and then GZ to kind of bring it above the baseline here, and we're gonna blow this up, and I'm gonna make it about like 8 feet wide. It doesn't have to be exactly, but that's about where I'm gonna go. And some of this video later on, as I'm just narrating how I was doing it at the time, my earlier screen cap, it's gonna be a little bit different, but it's important to think of scale when we're doing 3D design, right? So if I wanted to design a room, I don't want to make it 1 foot wide, because if you think about it from the perspective of light, sometimes lighting can look funky if, of course, you're trying to portray something big and then your scale is actually real small. So this is how we import an image, and we're going to start blocking out the letters. So the time lapse I'm showing is actually not me doing it live, but this is what we're gonna be doing. So I wanted to explain this step. So it's gonna be Shift A to bring in a new mesh plane, and let's find that in our scene. We're gonna grab it up here, and RX90, we're gonna turn it on 90 degrees and scale it down with X. We're just gonna come in and we'll make it a nice comfortable size, so it's good to start for us. Now a couple more tricks here with the background image. If we set this transparency on, then we can see the grid in front of it, and sometimes the grid is really helpful. And then of course you can tune the transparency to your liking, but we'll just keep it up. And also we can go into wireframe mode if it's really bothering us, but we'll go into edit mode now, and we'll just start, basically blocking out these letters. And I'm gonna show you some of them. We don't have to do each one. I'm gonna switch to a time lapse of me actually doing this earlier, but this will give me a chance to kind of explain the basics behind blocking, and kind of provide you with an example to go with from here. So I'm switching from edge mode to vertex mode. It looks like we turned accidentally. And to be more exact, it really helps to go into vertex snapping mode. So we'll turn on that snap, and we can of course do that with the keyboard command Shift Tab. And this way we can go with G and Z. We can make sure we are going up and down on the Z axis, and if I hover over another vertex or vertex, it will put me at the same level. So this way we can be very much exact in our modeling. So we just block this letter out. Now ideally this is not what you would like to have. What I would like to have ideally is just kind of concentrating all of our vertices to the edge, in the kind of in the corner. That way we can kind of guarantee a straight edge on one side, on this side. So, but you know, that'll be good enough. So that's our J, and we'll keep doing this. Of course, in the time lapse you will see that I'm doing this with all the letters. And the step I did here is, the next step was, if we wanted to move this a little bit in front of our reference image. Now if we go into edit mode, of course we can extrude this. So we extrude it, we give it a nice thickness, and then we go ahead and turn on a modifier, which is going to be subdivision surface. And we'll bump up, I think in my reference I was working with maybe a little bit higher subdivision. This is fine to start with, you can always make it higher. And then I added extra edge loops with Control R in edit mode. If you hover over it, you can add more edge loops to give more information to the mesh, to the modifier, to where to do what with the mesh, how to give us these nice curved edges that we're looking for. And then we're looking pretty good. So this way our letters are pretty nice and our corners are nice and we can take this to the next step. Our reference image, you can see the letters are one shape, or you know, a certain shape, and then the shaders we're going to deal with as well. The 3, however, has a different feature, so we're going to model that as well. We're going to go ahead and show you parts of that when we get to it. Now enjoy the rest of this time lapse doing each of the letters. The O is going to be a little bit different. We're going to connect a little bit of the O, and I'll show you that myself. The connection is pretty simple as we add a new plane and RX90. I don't know why I keep turning. And start a new letter. I'm just gonna block out the O as well, so that way this kind of shows us all of the challenges that we're gonna face, because what I call an island is a hole in the letter, so we have to actually join our mesh to itself. And there could be some things that you can get hung up on with that, and we can take a look at some of these problems and solve them now. And we can take a look at how many vertices, or how many vertices do we need on the side just to still keep our shape still intact. I think we can get away with this being 2 on the sides, 1 and 2. How's that? And then we can take this up from here all the way, go into edge mode. And of course I'm pressing G to move. I'm kind of pressing all the buttons with my left hand. As a true blenderer would, right? I'm kind of having trouble like keeping my 2 edges here, but we can always add more. I'm just trying to get around so It's not terribly boring. And now we got to the point where we're going to connect these two things. So of course we can be in snapping mode, which is important in this case to make it easier on us, and then go into vertice mode, and then literally just either with G snap the edge and then hover over, or just with the right click grab, or if your blender is set to left click grab, then go ahead and left, okay, whatever. Go ahead and left click grab that and grab it over one another. So once you're connected, that's not it though. However, you're gonna want to highlight all with A and go to mesh, clean up, merge by distance, and down here you'll see that it removed two vertices. This way now your mesh is connected. Beforehand, if I wanted to move this vertex, it would have I would have just opened the mesh back up again. So now that's good, and we can apply our modifier, which is going to be Subsurface, and now we can see it's workable. Now we add some extra stuff. We're going to repeat this process. I'm adding edge loose with Control R, and we're repeating this process throughout all of the letters, and we'll see that on the time lapse right now. And then we're gonna check out this number 3. The parabellum will be made out of text. That's a text object, so we'll see how to convert text to mesh and what the pitfalls and challenges with that is, versus us designing and blocking these letters out. And this is, I know that the critics will already, and I've seen this many times in my Facebook groups, that there are other ways to do this. And of course, I could trace this in other applications as SVG and then bring that in, of course, in Illustrator and all that. But I like to kind of keep everything in one program and work with subdiv modifiers. And this way, we're actually non-destructive editing this thing, and we can go all the way back to how the shapes are from later on down the project. So let's look at this time lapse and then jump into the next subject, which I believe it's either going to be the 3 or the chapter. So now we can look at the time lapse that was previously recorded. This was actually recorded last year in March. So we're just blocking out the letters. I have like a 16 times time lapse on this, so we can kind of get to the end of it, but it's mostly all the same thing every time. We extrude, we make sure that there's enough blocks so then our modifier can grab that and we can work with it well. Of course, I just started doing it plain in 2D first, and then we can see that, for example, this letter C I barely even blocked out. I just used one on every corner. One. Oh, it looks like I go back and fix it. There you go. Yeah, to make that turn in the letter. And then the letter K. These are all just plain right now, so they're not 3D. They don't have thickness. I started on the 3 as well, and we're gonna apply all the same thickness later on to these. And we're gonna get to the blocking being done, and we're gonna apply the subdiv next. And actually the next step right here, we're going to grab a text object and type in chapter, and this is how we're going to create this instead of blocking out letters. Of course, I'm going to write down in the description what the name of this font is, and you guys can go ahead and grab it. And I adjusted some of the settings of the font, of course, as you can, to get this final look, and kind of lined it up with our reference. And we did the same thing with parabellum. And once we are happy with the shape of it, I think I saved a copy of the text file so we could change it later, and then we just convert it over to a mesh. And here are the final adjustments of both parabellum and chapter. Right here at the end of this section, John Wick is still 2D, but we're gonna go ahead and fix that. And we're over here applying the next modifier, so the subsurf modifier, the same way we did on the first example letters. And we'll just keep chugging along. We add extra edge loops everywhere we feel like we need more information in the mesh. And we just take that shape of the reference image and make sure that everything is lined up. The 3 is going to take some extra time, and not only because of this mesh, we have to add an extra detail around the 3, which what I'm gonna do here is copy the outside edge by just selecting the outside edge and converting that into a curve, and then on the curve the geometry built-in features that you can use is like beveling and extrusion. So as we see later on, it's always nice to have math cap on if you need to kind of see your mesh. If there's pinching and stuff going on, we will see some of that pinching happening in like the N and the W, and we get to these little crevices around the edge where we have to basically get rid of our triangles. And with Subsurf you will come across that a whole lot. It helps to change the material you're looking at. So like in my case, I was using the math cap built-in looks, and it really helps make the mesh stand out and make sure I discover every issue that we had. And now we're combining edges here and making sure that the pinching doesn't happen around the sharp edges of the mesh. And of course I went and made sure that this is the same thing on both sides of the mesh, even though we don't need the back side. Now we just have a couple letters left, and then the K, and then of course every direction I added some helping edge loops, edge loop cuts all around in the Y and the Y, X, and Z directions basically. And now we are gonna start working, adding extra detail to the 3. I keep going back and checking my reference footage, and the 3 is gonna get that edge copied like I said before, and here we can see that edge then is gonna be turned into a curve. And when the curve is made, I can use the geometry functions of the curve and add that type of detail that the model is called for. At first the resolution is pretty low, but then we add a lot more segments to it after we fixed up the mesh. Some of these corners are sharp and some need to be just bent, so I had to go around and manually adjust all of the corners until we got a nice smooth edge that's following the 3 all the way around. And actually the 3 is going to go close to the camera, because as the reveal happens, the 3 and the K is going to be closest to the camera. And then of course the letters turn as well, and we will visit that in our next video in part 2, where we'll look at shading and animation of these letters. And then we'll move on to the final video where we'll look at composition, and we're going to take a look at how I put everything together in After Effects. So as we see this whole process right now, this is all non-destructive editing, so we can go back all the way to the roots and edit any part of this mesh. So that's a pretty powerful way to edit, and I always like to keep it that way until I have to kind of reduce my complexity. Well, thank you so much for watching this first episode. As you can see, later on in the next one, we're gonna take a look at a whole lot of other stuff that we're gonna do. This is gonna be animation. So we're gonna animate these letters coming out and animate the camera motion. And the letters actually don't come out, the letters only turn, and then the camera makes a motion. And this is all set up already here for me to export. And we can see the reference footage right here on the corner. And we can kind of compare to how that looks, the top and the bottom. So we'll look at this. We're gonna go into shading. So we're gonna take a look at everything that goes into the shading and the lighting of the scene. There is quite an amount of lighting going on. And finally, we will composite everything in After Effects. I'm not gonna go look at the After Effects project right now. We will look at that from the next video on, but slowly but surely we're going to get to make this look exactly as our reference image, or at least as close to it as I possibly can be. So thanks for watching. Next video is coming soon. See you later.